Hi, I'm Teresa Coates, and today I'm going to show you how to use paper piecing techniques with freezer paper to make perfect blocks.
So the first thing we need is our freezer paper pattern that is printed out. And then we need the pieces that go with it, a 4-inch square for the center, a 5-inch square that I've cut into 4 pieces, a 6-inch square that I've cut into 4 pieces, as well as a small ruler and my add a quarter ruler, rotary cutter. And because we're using freezer paper, I'm also going to need my iron. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pattern and we're going to crease the folds. So we're going to fold this back as we're working with it. So we need to get this set up and ready to go. So I'm going to press it against that add a quarter ruler and then crease it really nicely. I'm going to use that ruler for each one of these. Just line it up right next to that little line, press it up, then remove the ruler and crease it hard. Once that's done, I take my centerpiece. I'm going to be able to see that that centerpiece covers the whole part. The fabric's going to cover my center square, and I'm going to put that in position. Before I get it on there, I want to make sure that my directional fabric is in position right. And I'm going to use just the tip of the iron to press that into place and get it to kind of stick by melting the wax that's on the freezer paper just a little bit. I'm going to do it from the other side, and I can use the whole iron to get that stuck on there really well. So then we're going to trim off all of our seam allowances to get started. So I've made the square is a little bit bigger than that center square section, which gives us some wiggle room for placement, and we don't have to be super accurate. Then I can just come along each edge, trim off the seam allowance, and make it so that it is perfectly centered and ready to go. Then I'll take my next round of fabric, which in this case is the orange fabric here, that I'm going to line up my raw edge to sew it right across where that line is. Take it over to the machine and I'm going to sew it, pressing back that freezer paper, and I'm going to sew right next to the fold. So I start before I need the stitching to actually work, and then I'm going to stitch right along that fold. A straight line, 2.0 stitch length, just stitching those 2 layers together. I don't need to back stitch, I'm just going to stitch beyond that. So now I'll flip it over and use my next piece of the orange triangle, put that in position, and I'll kind of try to center it a little bit, make the raw edges match, and then I'll be able to flip this over, fold back the edge, and stitch right along that fold one more time. Then go over and give it a press with the iron. So again, I'm just using the tip of the iron, press that out, get it to melt the wax just slightly to secure it, and also pressing out that fold so that the seams are open and really flat. You can see it isn't perfectly centered, and that's absolutely fine. Then I'll press it from the other side, melt that wax just a little bit more. All right, so now we're going to do our other sides. So we're just going to do the exact same thing, put it in position, pull it back, and then stitch along that edge of the fold. So again, not stitching through it, not back stitching, just going to stitch right along. Sometimes that seam allowance gets stuck, and I will go ahead and grab my stiletto so that I can push that back and out of the way. And then I will just sew forward and along the fold. The next step is to fix my seam allowances again. So I'm going to pull the fabric away from the freezer paper, kind of just release that little wax hold on it, and use my add a quarter ruler to trim off the 1/4 of an inch. So I've got a 6-inch square that is directional, and I have cut it from corner to corner to create 4 triangles. This is how we can keep directional fabric going the direction that we want it to. All right, I'm going to turn my block, and I'm going to put the bottom triangle up on the top. You can see I'm kind of just making them opposite of how I cut them, but the direction of the print is going to go the same way on all of them. This creates it on the bias. So if you want to create a directional fabric that is going straight up and down, make sure that you cut your original 6-inch square on the bias. Then I'm going to take those triangles 2 at a time, place them where I want to be, and take that over to the machine. So once I've got that done, I'm going to take it back and press the whole thing. So you can see that mine doesn't completely match the square, and that's absolutely fine because I rough cut out my pattern so it has an extra 1/4 of an inch beyond the original cut line. Now I'm going to trim that, and I'm going to trim right along the outside line. That outer line will give me a 6.5-inch square because it includes my seam allowance. So I'm going to trim each one of these to make it a perfect 6.5-inch square. You can see it looks great. We're just going to peel that freezer paper right off. You're going to reuse the freezer paper to make as many more as you need.